It's time for your questions of sex with Alix Fox. It's the Foxhole. Hello, Alex.
Bonjour, Ollie. I'm feeling so bouncy today that I'm like a space hopper that could be doing its way actually into space.
And you have exciting...
Is that the right word?
You have an update for us. We tasked you with finding out whether it was an urban myth or whether it was true that someone once put a butt plug in themselves and then, was it died in an MRI?
Apparently so. This is a rumour that has been slathering itself all over the internet, I think since at least May 2023. There was this apparent picture of a scan that had this gigantic mortar-shaped butt plug wedged up right near somebody's ribs. And the story went that a person undergoing an MRI had worn what they believed to be a pure silicone butt plug, but they didn't think this was going to pose any danger. Turned out this butt plug, allegedly, contained a metal core or metal balls inside it. And because it reacted to the magnets, that it shot, I quote, yes, according to the internet, like an anal railgun from butt to gut and tore them up inside and apparently killed them.
Hearing the enthusiasm, the relish with which you're confronting this story.
I think this is probably bullshit, but it's bullshit with a basis. This is supposed to have happened in the USA, and what I could find was that the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, keep what's called a MedWatch database, which is it's a safety reporting program where they note down anything that has gone wrong within a medical context. And in April 2023, so the month before this scan started to circulate, there was an adverse event report pertaining to a 22-year-old female who had undergone an MRI, apparently without issue, but when the nursing staff, when the medics started removing her from the machine, she apparently screamed. She reported being nauseous, and she revealed that she had worn a butt plug during the procedure. Now, you'd think if something had shot through her at the speed of sound from her rectum right up into her breathing apparatus, then she might feel
would have been a little bit more hysterical.
Yeah, and I also doubt she would have been able to hold still during the MRI procedure. I think a radiologist did chat to her to make sure she was all right, but then ominously, the report also says that she didn't return any of their calls after that. Maybe she was embarrassed. Maybe she was worried about claiming on the insurance. Maybe she did actually die by butt plug, but I think that's unlikely.
Okay, so I mean, sort of whether it's true or not, public service health message: don't wear a butt plug to an MRI.
It 100% is true that if you have anything in your body that you weren't born with that contains metal, then there's potential danger to your health.
Let's get to your questions of sex then. This one comes from an anonymous, relatively straight man in his early 30s who says, I've recently started dating someone who I can really see a future with. However, there is an issue which is causing me anxiety. She's in her late 20s and this is her first relationship. Meanwhile, I come into this with a few relationships, both long and short term, behind me. We are managing to navigate our very different levels of romantic and sexual experience, but there is one area I'm not quite sure how to handle. I have some kinks, which I've been open and honest about. While she doesn't consider them a deal breaker for the relationship, she has made it clear that she does not want some of them to be a part of our love life. So I would appreciate Alix's advice on how to manage a long-term monogamous relationship where one partner is kinkier than the other. I love her and I don't want my sexuality to cause problems in the relationship, but at the same time, I want to be able to explore my kinks and sexuality without shame or awkwardness with her. What a wholesome email, actually. I think. I love her. I want to be open with her. I want her to be understanding. I'm being honest about what I want. I mean, this is all quite refreshing stuff, isn't it? And probably not that unusual, I expect.
Certainly not in terms of both situations where people's kinks are out of sync. It's quite common to have a wonderful time with somebody, but there to be something that doesn't quite match.
Yeah.
And for people, especially in the early stages of a relationship, to essentially be weighing up, I give this another few days. Do I see if I can find ways to make it work? Or do I call it a day?
Yeah, but also kinks aside, the fact that she's in her late 20s and this is her first relationship is quite unusual, isn't it? I mean, actually, whoever she was in a relationship with, the chances are if they're in their early 30s, they're going to be more sexually experienced than her.
I was wondering about the potential contexts for this. It did occur to me that one possibility might be that maybe these are people from a religious background or from a cultural heritage where perhaps it is more permissible for men to go out and experiment and have sexual and romantic experience, whereas women are expected more to remain virginal.
To be courted.
Yeah,
yes.
But they're at the same time, culturally, it is encouraged that when you are maybe introduced to somebody or you meet somebody who you're ready to settle down with, that you're thinking about long-term commitment and that idea of love and monogamy is definitely encouraged. And that can be quite difficult to balance against two lives that have previously been quite disparate in terms of their experience. That's just one potential scenario here, though. We don't have a lot of knowledge about why this female partner hasn't had much experience.
Well, what we do know is that she's talking to him about it, which again, like very often what you say is, you're going to have to talk about this. But they are talking about this. She said, I'm happy to do this and this. I don't want to do that. I mean, it seems to me they're sort of in a good place here in that they're confronting the issue.
To give a slightly less generous interpretation of what you have classified to be a wholesome question here, I did notice that essentially this gent, and I'm sure he's lovely, is sort of going, I would like my cake and to eat it somehow. And there is no mention of what his lady friend wants and what her desires are. It's just what she doesn't want to do. It might simply be because he hasn't got round to that in the email, and that's fine. But all advice I'm going to give is going to be under the proviso that all conversations should be about both of you.
Sure.
This should be as mutually beneficial and as mutually involved as possible. So on that note, Ollie, as is my wont, I have 4 options for this gentleman and I have made them rhyme.
Right. Okay. It's going to be hard for editing, but let's hope they're all good.
Okay. In a nutshell, I think there's 4 things that he can do here. And maybe more than one will suit this couple.
Oh, this isn't the rhymey bit yet.
Nope.
Sorry, I was like adapting myself into a sort of Shakespearean audience there, waiting to be serenaded in verse.
I'm getting to the rhyme. Okay.
Okay.
What they can do is 1, nudge and judge. 2, fudge. 3, don't begrudge. And 4, budge.
Very nice, yeah. Right, so how do you do nudge and judge then?
I had a chit chat to Shae Harmon, who is a queer, kink-friendly therapist. And one of the first things that they advocated here is identify what the actual goals and feelings associated with your kink are. Because there is a big difference, isn't there, between an erotic act and an erotic theme. You
might like the smell of petrol, or you might like being doused in petrol. 2 different things.
I was more making the point. That's a very obscure example, Ollie.
Well, all right. You might like to be doused in petrol, or you might like the theme of pretending you're getting it on with a mechanic.
Yes.
Is that better?
You might say, I'm a person who likes to have my chest shat on, and I need somebody to lay a log from nipple to nipple, or I'm not happy.
Only in your world do you think that's a more sensible example.
But when you dig deeper into what the feelings, what the emotions, what you are trying to gain from that kink is, then you might discover, well, actually, it's because I'm really into humiliation. Or I really like the taboo nature of that. I like feces because it's a naughty thing that I don't usually get to see.
Yeah.
And then you might be able to find
a softer version.
Yeah.
Yes.
Other non-fecal forms of play that still give you that feeling.
Throw some jelly at me.
Yeah. There are also ways of sort of diluting a kink, if you will, that I would compare to, if you're a whiskey fan, you might really like a glass of neat, good stuff, right? But you might also appreciate it with an ice cube or some water in there. It's still going to satisfy you in a similar way. To give some very practical examples to do with kink and not with shit, I often get asked, what do I do if I'm submissive and my partner is also submissive? Neither of us want to dominate the other. One successful way of navigating that might be for you to frame the act of giving your partner instructions or being dominant as actually doing the thing that they want you to in service to them. So as the submissive, you're saying, oh yes, I'll give you rules, I'll give you instructions. And so it's the mental framing of that.
Yeah.
A while ago I spoke to an individual who was really into knife play. Pretty extreme. I could understand why their partner did not want to bring blades into the bedroom, but it was a big thing for them. What they found out was that it was the idea of being on the edge that appealed to them. And so they found a workaround where they wore a blindfold and their partner ran like a plastic picnic knife over their skin, or even a pencil. So there was no real threat.
Yeah.
The partner felt comfortable because they weren't doing something that felt way out of the realms of
I just love the idea of picnic fetish, because that seems like much more my kind of bag. Do it with the cucumber sandwiches.
So once you've identified exactly what feelings, emotions, scenarios that you get from your kink, once you've like distilled it down, then you can work out perhaps more palatable ways of practicing that together, or a dilute version that still does the job.
Let's move on to fudge then. How do you approach that?
There are loads of ways to fudge things outside of your relationship to get your kinks fulfilled. One of those options might be to see a professional. If that is something that you both agree is acceptable, and again, without pressure, without coercion, within the boundaries of your relationship, your partner might go, this really isn't my cup of tea, so why don't you go down the calf and essentially get somebody who grinds that type of beans for a living to go and spank you or set your tits on fire or whatever it is that you're into. There are also lots of things that you can actually indulge on your own. Things like wax play, nipple play, self-restraint. You can restrict yourself. You can deny yourself. You can impose some kind of reward or punishment system. So experimenting with getting yourself off might be an option here for fudging things. These two have specified that they wish to have a monogamous relationship, but for some people, a fudgy solution might be to open up the relationship, to explore consensual non-monogamy to some degree. Do be really careful with that, of course. If you're having difficulties in a relationship, often adding more relationships is not the way forward. There's a really good new book that's just come out by an author called Lola, which is a Non-Monogamy Journal. It's a really good textbook to help people explore their feelings and preempt challenges if that's something that they are considering. You might, depending on your kink, look into whether there is a non-platonic night or workshop that focuses on it. For example, I've been to shibari workshops, rope tying workshops, where the aim is not to tie someone up and then penetrate them or get off with them. It's all about practicing your techniques, almost like crafting. Obviously, if you're somebody for whom this kink is a really sexual thing, then just doing it in that platonic way might not be as satisfying as you want it to be. But for other people, that will be enough to quench that thirst. There's erotica, there's porn. One lass I spoke to who said that she was into something that just really was not her partner's thing, said that she privately fantasized in her own head about different scenarios when they were together. And for her, that satiated her desire enough.
Yeah, that's an odd one, isn't it? Because, you know, that sort of goes against what you're saying about talking everything through and including the other person and their feelings. But at the same time, like, what's in your head, that's your property, isn't it? You can think whatever you like. No one should have any rights over that.
Well, and some couples might find that if they chat about it, then that works for them. They have an agreement that person, one of them can go to their own little special room in their brain while they're together, and so long as it's not inflicted.
So long as she knows you're imagining her as Margaret Thatcher, that's fine.
Not all of these fudgy solutions will suit everybody, but I'm throwing them out there because they might suit some. Do proceed with care and caution. Some of these fudges are, quite frankly, they do have the potential to end you up in a very unwhipple scrumptious chocolate river of disaster. I did speak to a contact who had been in a similar position to the couple who have contacted us, where one of them had a really big kink that the other wasn't into. They tried to make things work in a variety of ways. Firstly, it started with one of these guys in question going to see a professional. They had consent to do that, or at least they believed they did. It turned out that their boyfriend actually did see that as almost a form of cheating and had agreed to it because they felt like they were under duress to do so, and that they had, in order to be a good partner, they had to make some acquiescence to this kink, when in fact that made them feel really deeply uncomfortable. This gent then did go and try out indulging his kink in public at a sex party, but under certain rules and regulations. The whole thing for them, I think, was that their partner found this kink so fundamentally repellent that everything just felt very awkward and uncomfortable, and resentment built. So I'm not saying it isn't hard to navigate, but so long as you undertake that journey carefully, there are routes that you can potentially explore.
Yeah. I'm smiling because we're talking as if the kink really is something extreme.
Yeah, we don't know.
It could just be that he likes bubbles or something. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Could be something quite innocent. I like ribbons.
Your other two options are to give up the kink entirely and not begrudge it. Now, that might seem like a massive compromise, but are you convinced that you definitely love and need this kink to the extent that you seem to be suggesting? Or is it just something that has excited you so far that maybe there are other things that you will discover as the two of you explore together that supersede this desire?
He does hint at that, doesn't he?
Yeah.
I'm looking to be able to explore my kinks, he says. Maybe this particular one can take a back seat.
Precisely. And also, he does mention that his partner is okay with some of the kinks.
Yes.
Maybe lean into those then. That
Yeah.
might be a decent way forward for them. And then finally, though, there is budge. If you do decide that you're incompatible and that this is a no-goer for you, then really the only thing that is left is to break up. That might suggest that what you have here is not perhaps a kink, but more of a fetish. The difference being a kink is a nice to have, a fetish is, and if I don't have it, then I'm not going to get on and get off.
Right.
Before you explore any of these things, maybe just check that you are on the same page about this relationship, full stop. The person who's written to us says that they're in love and they want a long-term relationship. They can see themselves with this person. Have you had the talk about whether you definitely are aligned about that? Because if
not, doesn't matter.
Yeah, if you are this person's first relationship, and they're having revelation after revelation, there is a chance that they might decide that they need to further explore other relationships. So maybe just that is also a thing that you will need to have compassionate, curious, calm conversation.
Sage advice, as ever. If you have a question of sex, what do you need to do with it, Alix?
You need to scurry on over to modernman.co.uk and hit the feedback button.